So here we have Piers Morgan with the Canadians Kevino'leary and Steve Keen. Steve Keen's an economist. Kevino'leary is a monopolist. That's as simple as I can put it. Here's the heading of this video. Don't want my kids living under Chinese rule. And they open with Modami here. But I have to confess to you and let it be known, just understand, to preface where I'm coming from. And I was doing Japanese martial arts back in the 70s. 1987, moved to the internal arts of Kung Fu. A master I used to study under, a Taoist master, died January 6, 1998. So I've had a lot of relations with the Chinese community in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So just so you know where I'm coming from. Now let's look at Modami here.
Today, we're taxing it.
Redistribution of wealth has been attempted multiple times over 200 years. It failed every single time.
China's been far more effective at driving people out of poverty.
I don't want my kids living under Chinese rule. We're going to go into a program about what I call compliance by tenderization.
Yikes, compliance by tenderization? We're just going to use a big club and kinetic force to get our way? Let's see.
You say to whoever the supreme leader is, your brother's house on the hill at 2 o'clock, it's going to be gone. The new garage you built for your cars, it's going to be gone.
Those are war crimes.
They will be tenderized constantly. You continually tenderize their Air Force. It's all about tenderization.
So let's be clear. Tenderization begets tenderization. Another way of putting it is violence begets violence. The only way you're going to stop the cycle is by changing your behavior. And it's really as simple as that.
The US was in such a rush to sign an MOU with Iran, but it was purposefully vague about everything of substance. That wasn't an accident or a failure of statecraft. It was the only way to get it done. But that's also the reason it's unraveling fast and seems destined to unravel again in the months or even years to come. Oil prices will spike every time it happens. So will the cost of fertilizer, food, insurance, and borrowing. In short, everything will pretty much cost more. It's the very inflation which President Trump pledged to rein in. And in a big election year, it could become his worst nightmare. Well, not by coincidence, Trump has been actively promoting the Freedom Fuel Network this week, a chain of gas stations offering cut-price fuel. The White House says they're not subsidized by the government, but it's bizarrely unclear who is behind them. Other recent giveaways include Trump accounts, free investment pots for kids, and Trump RX for subsidized prescription drugs, all of which was enough for USA Today to ask, Trump realizes this is a kind of socialism, right? Against a backdrop of furious debate about wealth taxes, both in the US and indeed on this show, we've invited two money-minded guests to tell us what is really going on. Joining me to debate this is Kevino'leary, Shark Tank investor and venture capitalist, and Steve Keen, professor of economics, who's here with me in London. So Steve, welcome to London. Lovely to see you.
Oh, I better disclose this as well. I do regularly attend lectures with the economist Steve Keen on the right, just so that you're aware. The only way to understand how to change an economy is to learn how the economy works. So I educate myself on economics, and it's simple as that.
You and Kevin, great to have you back on Unsaid. So Kevin,
Also, footnote, I choose to learn instead of relying on other people to give me false information or non-truths as truths.
let me just cut to the quick here. I don't get any of this Iran thing from a political or economic strategic vanguard, if you like, in the sense that the longer it's dragged on, the more of a drain it's been on the global energy market in particular, and it shows no sign of ending anytime soon. It's obviously had a bad effect on inflation. It's obviously negated a lot of the impact of the tariff war, which many people thought was actually going quite well. And so people look at it and go, well, hang on, we're meddling in another Middle Eastern war, which Trump said he wanted to not do.
Tariff war. Did he mention tariff war? Like, why do we have tariff wars? Why do we create this economic hardship for people?
And it's having the wrong effect on cost of living and inflation, which are now spiking again when they were going down. What is going on here? Can you make sense of it?
And yet, the market's near all-time highs, and you're bringing up a great question: why?
Yeah.
Let me put the dots together, and what I look at it from the investment point of view, from the sovereign wealth.
You notice one thing he said right off the bat: markets are at an all-time high. And I want to bring your attention to this in particular. Here are the markets from 1975, spike at 2000 bubble. Here from 2015, as soon as Trump took over, you see a spike straight up. Now, this is the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. Meanwhile, the Dow is over 52,000. So what is this spike? This spike is just speculation, and that's what it is. And private debt speculation caused the Depression, 1930, and the crash of 2008.
Point of view, private equity point of view, trying to figure out what this means long term, because you're right, it's definitely inflationary, not just for energy costs, other commodities, for example, fertilizer and other goods that have to go through the strait. The whole deal is about opening up the strait perpetually, no different than Panama Canal, Suez Canal. So what's the solution going to be? It's going to look like this. This is what.
But here's the situation. With the deal that Obama struck, you had the Strait of Hormuz open. It was not an issue whatsoever. You also had atomic nuclear regulators from various different countries that were authorized to go into Iran and monitor their enrichment. We had that in place. Why is what's going on now any different? Why was it necessary to cause harm to other people? And it's really causing harm, using kinetic energy bombs to harm people. For what purpose? To try to achieve what was already in place before Trump ripped up the deal? It makes no sense. It's really dumb.
What the market is assuming, and I'm betting, and with my own dollars, as I put money to work for myself and my investors, this is what it's going to look like 24 months from now. There's going to be a cost to maintain the strait open, and let's call that, I'm guessing like everybody else, but $5 billion a month. There'll be a tithe on every ship, maybe 10 to 20% of the value of the goods in the ship.
Why is there a tithe on every ship going forward when there was none to begin with? The agreement with Obama and the Iranians? There was no transitory fee or usury fee in place for any ship of any nation through the Strait of Hormuz. And now we're saying there's going to be a tithe, there's going to be a usury fee, and you're supposed to. Why would there be a usury fee? Just makes no sense. Unless it's created by Donald Trump because of irrational behavior, because of him wanting to be the big leader of the world.
But what that does is reduce insurance amounts significantly if the protector is the United States plus a coalition of the willing in the Gulf, and we know which states there are. Now, why would Iran put up with this? Well, here's why. And this is where AI comes into play that I don't think a lot of people have thought through. Let's go right to the Department of War, the Pentagon, or whatever you want to call it these days, and think about this. We're going to go into a
So everybody's going to give their power away to these LLMs, language learning models, and they create these tokens to create potentialities or probabilities. All AI is based on what has happened in the past up until the present, and nothing else. So you're letting AI think for you. You're going to give away your ability to think and let AI do it for you. Just makes no sense, folks.
Program of what I call compliance by tenderization. Now, what does that mean? If you have extremely high precision ordnance, you don't need boots on the ground. I'll give you an example. You say to whoever the supreme leader is of that month or that quarter in Iran, your brother's house on the hill at 2 o'clock, it's going to be gone. Get the maids, get everybody out of there. The new garage you built for your cars, 4:30 on Thursday, it's going to be gone. 20% of your capacity we're going to take out next Friday at 9:05 so that your ability to pay your militia will be reduced by 20% in terms of the oil you sell to China and other countries. And with this precision technology, which, by the way, is using AI servers, American servers, this is what is going to change the nature of war. They are never going to comply. They will be tenderized constantly. And so you have this balance of tenderization without a whole lot of commitment, because you're going to make other countries pay for the peace, which is basically keeping the Strait open. The price of oil will vary between 65 and 80 during the
So you're going to tenderize people, you're going to friggin' torch people, you're going to blow up people so that you can have access to the Strait of Hormuz when there was unfettered access before. Like, you're rewriting history so that you can create and cause harm to other people. The Iranian people are not bad people. They just want to live like everybody else, just have a happy life. You can criticize their government, but by blowing people up is not going to change anything. You're just creating resentment. We've seen that with how the Jewish situation with Gaza. You know, Netanyahu, he financed with money through Qatar to finance Hamas. He knew what he was doing. He created that so that he could have this excuse to torch people, to kill people. Most of the Jewish people are very good people. And they have to suffer because of a few leaders that have these radical tendencies. Why they're allowed to have nuclear weapons and others aren't as a deterrent makes no sense either. Why don't we get rid of all the nuclear weapons that everybody has and start fresh? That would make more sense. That would be common sense.
Tensions and the tenderization programs. But every bridge, every house, every power center, every pipeline, every single refinery can be trimmed with a tenderization methodology. Not the whole thing. You don't kill anybody. You simply tell them coming at 9:05. And there's nothing they can do to stop it, because you continually tenderize their Air Force, making sure they have a weakened air defense using inexpensive drones. And all of this is why, and people haven't thought this through, every data center built going forward in the U.S. is going to have to give up at least 20% of its capacity to the U.S. government to protect the future of the U.S. citizen and allied countries. And why?
So you got to pay for protection? What's this, a shakedown of the world? This is a shakedown of the world. Tariffs are a shakedown on the world. Protection by charging a fee is a shakedown on the world. What happened that we've taken this path that really is not harmonious to the human experience?
Why do I say that? Because I'm in this business. I build them in Norway and Finland and Canada and Utah, and I'm having those discussions. And I agree with this policy. It's coming. It's all about tenderization. Old warfare's over. New AI war, drone-based, high-precision ordnance, that's the future.
Oh, so we're going to just continue with war using AI and just say that's acceptable. Why don't we just get rid of war, period? Like, why do you waste time, effort to cause pain and suffering and destruction? Can you not make your point through dialogue and discourse back and forth? Like, truly, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Well, fascinating, and has a real clarity to it, which Donald Trump seems to have not been able to exercise verbally for quite some time about all this. Steve Keen, you were pulling a few faces there. I take it you're not entirely in agreement with Kevin. So what would you say to that?
I'm not in agreement. And for a start, this is a typical, I'm afraid to say, one-sided American view of everything. Everything Americans do, Iran seems capable of doing just as well. And the fragility of that area is something which is grossly underestimated by the American invaders and by people commentating like this. If that's what America tries to do to Iran, Iran is quite within its rights because those are war crimes. You're taking out civilian facilities, damaging the civilian system. Those are war crimes. It's quite irresponsible of Iran to say, we're going to take out desalination plants. And if they do, some countries in that region rely on over 90% of their water on desalination plants. Now, all Iran has to do is say one more bomb and we take out desalination plants, and that lever America has with the backing of the Arab states is over.
I mean, Kevin, that has been the problem for the last 4 months, is that Iran has not really bothered in trying to compete with the United States and Israel with conventional military warfare. Instead, it's run an asymmetric war using the Strait of Hormuz as this extraordinary piece of leverage, holding the whole world over an energy barrel, and also attacking the Gulf states in a way that's really damaged them economically. So there's almost like there's two wars going on here. And as Steve said, I mean, they've pretty much responded to anything that the US and Israelis have been doing by doing their own thing, which has turned out to be often very effective. How do you stop them doing that?
Well, to understand the future of this conflict, you have to go back and look at the past. 60 years ago, this was a very enlightened nation, and it just ran into some pretty bad management. And let me explain the management structure and why the tenderization program is going to work very effectively. You've got 150,000 paid militia overseeing an army of 1.1 million paid militia. The 150,000 have all the power, and they're close to whoever the leader du jour is. They make that money through nefarious means, much of it illegal, but based on energy sales. So if you want a tenderization program that effectively threatens the leadership so they understand the pain of tenderization, you start to play with the economics, which right now are about $202 million US a month. You can turn that off tomorrow with a small amount of tenderization. I'm not suggesting the whole thing. You just start with 10%.
Okay, so we use money and kinetic force with bombs. He mentions 60 years ago. Let's go back to 1953, when Iran was led by a democratic government that was running the country, and the Shah was pushed off as a figurehead. And Muhammad, that was leading this democratic push within Iran, was actually placing the oil of the country into a state-funded oil situation for the Iranian people. But the British and the Americans decided they did not want that. They put the Shah back into power, and how they did that was they financed a coup. Can you imagine that? CIA sent in a financial hitman to destabilize the country's financial infrastructure, a guy by the name of Perkins, if I remember right. And the British had BP oil, which ran the oil out of the country, because you have to remember, after going back even further, World War I, Russia controlled the north of Iran, and Britain controlled the south part of Iran. Nobody tells you about this. And then 1953, financial coup by the Americans and the British together put the Shah back into power. Now, if the Shah was fair to his people, you would not have had the uprising in 1979 that put the Khomeini in power. It wouldn't have happened. But the Shah was so brutal to his people, the British and the Americans, as always, don't really understand what's going on. They say, we're doing it for democracy, make things better. They just create a different oppression and suppression of the Iranian people to the extent that the people uprised with Khomeini to throw the Shah out of power. So the Americans and British created the problem. You're blaming Khomeini and his radical clerics. Meanwhile, they wouldn't have been in power if the Americans and the British were a little more prudent in how they allowed the Shah to manage the affairs in Iran. You keep blaming the Iranians, you keep blaming Khomeini. I'm not saying Khomeini and this radical Islam is acceptable. It's not, but the British and the Americans created the problem. Don't blame the Iranians. The British and the American created the problem.
And you squeeze, because what you're trying to do is get the leadership, who I don't think will ever change. They have no problem killing their people. It's a brutal place. But that's their own business. But if you threaten...
And look at ICE under Trump has no problem killing their own people. Do you see the irony here?
Their ability to pay for their security, which is 150,000 plus the 1.1 million, and you do that through tenderization, it's...
Oh, and the Americans have no problem tenderizing the Iranian people. Trump said, I'll back the revolutionaries in Iran. 40,000 people lost their life because Trump said, I'll be there to back you up. He wasn't there to back him up.
Highly effective, and it's going to work. And it has nothing to do with the U.S. playing some kind of overall leadership role. It's the region together that will agree on this strategy because they have the ability to do it. Currently, the Chinese cannot match the jamming technology that the U.S. is using, and all of these high-precision ordnance, which currently are too expensive. So there's a whole new program of lower-priced drones being built in places like North Dakota, Utah, Oklahoma, where they're testing much lower-cost ordnance with much higher precision. So when you talk about tenderization, you can be very, very specific. You don't have to kill anybody. What you want to kill is cash flow paying militia.
But why?
Is
How
it going
come?
to work?
Okay, but
100%. It's
but
going to
Kevin,
work.
why am I hearing all about this from you and not from President Trump? Why is he not coming out with a whole speech about tenderization in the way that you have?
You know, I spend a fair amount of my time in Washington these days because the projects I'm building are at 16 billion at a time. You should make the assumption that every tenant is talking to me about facilities like the ones I have in Canada, Finland, Norway, Denmark, including those agencies concerned about this technology. And I'm not spilling anything that's secret. I'm telling you that both that saved those two pilots was controlled by AI technology and predictive math that made sure it had the weather to go rescue those two pilots out of a server, maybe in northern Florida near Jacksonville, I don't know, or perhaps in Texas, but it was on sovereign soil in the US. That's an AI war you're watching right now. And it's a new form of warfare. And if the Chinese got more advanced and they wanted to take over Taiwan, they would do exactly the same thing. We can't let that happen. So what I'm suggesting is a narrative that's playing out now privately. I'm a private sector guy. I don't work for the government. Is every single data center built going forward and the power generation associated with it in North America or in those nations that are in the circle of friendship, like Finland, like Norway, like Canada, 20% of that capacity goes for defense. 20%. 20% of the servers always on guard. And that's where we're going. And I think people should start thinking this through because they haven't tied the dots together. And I don't think Trump's going to, but I'm telling you what's going to happen. I guarantee you this is how it's going to play out.
Okay, Steve, you're still not convinced?
No, absolutely not. I'm listening to McNamara 40 years later with body bags replaced by tenderisation, which sounds like we're talking about a cooking show rather than the real world. And it's all one-sided, as if the only country that can do this is America. One thing we've learned from this whole experience is China is well and truly leaving America in its dust in several industrial sectors, potentially including AI. And we know Iran has got enormous capabilities on the same front. A lot of what you're getting from America is coming from what's been done in Ukraine. I'm sorry, I just don't see this as a one-sided war.
Let me turn to an impact of this war, which is obviously the economy, but also cost of living for people. There are many people in America really struggling. There are many people in the UK really struggling. And I had a sort of populist economist called Gary Stevenson on the show last week, who's got a new film out. He's been pretty heavily criticised for it. But I want to play a clip from that and then just talk to you about this concept which he is very strong about, which is about a wealth tax.
Listen, I know that if we don't deal with growing inequality, then ordinary British people will fall into further and further desperate poverty. And I know that's going to happen. And I see it happening, and they see it happening. I don't want it to happen. I come out here, I tell them, if you don't want your kids to be poor, you need to deal with this growing inequality. The only way to deal with that is growing taxation.
Now, Steve, let me start with you there. What is your view of a wealth tax?
I'm in favour of redistribution from the wealthy to the poor. So I'm on the same side as Gary when it comes to that front. My problem comes down to, will the wealth tax actually work? And is it a problem of wealth that's causing the issues we're having? It certainly is a contributing factor, but a major part of this is, and particularly looking at the Californian bill, which is where I made my comments earlier this week. That Californian bill is saying we must increase state tax because of government funding cutbacks by the federal government. Now, in fact, it's the federal government cutbacks that I think are the mistake. And you don't need to balance the government's books. This is all a case of people applying household accounting to government finances, and it's completely and absolutely wrong in accounting to do that. And this is what's causing a lot of the angst we're seeing around the world, because when you cut back spending, what do you cut back spending on? Health, services, education and welfare. You don't cut it back on the military-industrial complex. We're getting a case here about devoting 20% of the government's money to the military-industrial complex. It gets far too much already. So I agree with Gary's sentiments. I don't think he's got the right mechanism to do it. We do need to reduce the wealth inequality, and we do need to provide the welfare services we used to provide 50 years ago, when we had far less industrial power, industrial wealth. We gave people welfare. We had health and education, which was worthwhile. That's what's being destroyed. And this is where a lot of the anger is coming at the ruling class in America now and the ruling class here in the UK.
I mean, Kevin, it's also true the populations of the United States and the UK were massively smaller than they are now. I mean, one of the problems we have, for example, in the UK with the National Health Service is when it was created for a population of 50 million people. We're now 70 million people. And it's still the same system. It's creaking at the seams because we've had so many people come into the country, putting extra pressure on it. But specific to this concept of a wealth tax, the idea is becoming increasingly popular with the public. Roughly 70%, 75% of Brits are in favour of it. 62% of Americans say billionaires are taxed too little. And there's no doubt, you've got a moment in time here where you have the first trillionaire in Elon Musk, and yet you have millions of people who can't afford to feed their children in both our countries. So what's the solution to that?
So both of us, or all of us, all three of us on this narrative, remember the song Taxman by the Beatles in the 60s.
Yeah.
And the Beatles, like everybody else that was making money, didn't want to get taxed at 98%. So they moved to the south of France. Then France tried it in the 80s. They tried socialism. Didn't work.
Okay, so here's what's wrong with his narrative, and I'll explain it to you in a very simple way. Trump's big, beautiful bill took away from health care, took away from infrastructure building to create more efficient movement of goods and services, to give a tax break to the top 1% and 10%. 4.5 trillion went to the top 1% and 10%. And here's the problem with that. When times are tough and the economy's hit a low ebb, the top 1% and 10% have no problem living. The other factor that's in place is the bottom 80% and 90% are the people that buy refrigerators. So if 80 and 90% of the population cannot buy stoves, refrigerators, and regular cars, you're hurting the economy. So why are you not putting that 4.5 trillion that you give to the 1% and the 10% and move that into the system that creates a solid foundation for everyday people to lift up the whole economy in its totality? And this is the reality of things. And this is what everybody's missing.
People left and moved to Switzerland and other countries. It's been tried everywhere. Socialism has been attempted. The redistribution of wealth has been attempted multiple times over 200 years. It failed every single time.
We're getting redistribution up these days. That's what people are complaining about. We have super inequality now.
Listen, there's always been inequality.
Which rivals the pharaohs.
Now, wait a second. There's always been inequality. But when you talk about an extreme like a trillionaire, okay, how many jobs has Elon created? How many billions in taxes has he already paid? How many new technologies did he develop without government?
Meanwhile, Trump's supposed to be a billionaire and he only paid $750. Can you believe that? $750. How much did actually Elon Musk pay in taxes? Kevino'leary, how much did you actually pay in taxes? This is what nobody's talking about. How many refrigerators you buy a year there, Kevino'leary? Do you buy a couple million? Well, you've only got a couple households, so you don't need a couple million. But the average guy needs at least one good working refrigerator, one good working stove, and a vehicle to get around for him and his family. This is what everybody's forgetting. And this is the mismatch that we're seeing, and it's represented here.
Assistance initially. How much risk did he take when SpaceX was public?
I'm all for people being rewarded for
failed in
taking risk.
2008. And I argue to you that everybody that tries this will get to the same place as Cuba, North Korea.
And what about China?
Russia.
Okay, this is the elephant in the room we finally have. People have been saying to me for decades, what country is trying your approach? I've had me say that I can't nominate one. Now I can nominate China. And China's been far more effective at dragging people out of poverty. And it's also whipping America's industrial ass. Now, this is something which you're going to tell me China's communist, or rather capitalist. That'll be good fun. It's the one country which is focused upon redistribution, raising the poor up, and extending the services the vast majority of the public achieve. You might not know of John, you probably know of John Kenneth Galbraith. One of his most famous comments was to talk about America being characterised by private affluence and public squalor. And that really is the state of America. China's gone the opposite direction. It wants public affluence as well as private affluence. It showed the combination works. Now, that is completely against the narrative you're giving.
Kevin?
No, I don't agree. I think you brought up a very good point, though. There is only one large adversary to rival the success of the U.S. economy for 250 years with all of its faults. It's still the only country on earth where people will risk their lives drowning under barbed wire in a river to get into. The American dream is the primary export of the country. I don't see a lot of people begging.
Hold on, Kevino'leary, who are you kidding? It's pay to play now. The people that came in through immigration, that picked the fruits in the fields in California and other vegetables, etc., are being deported. You've got an ethnic cleansing going on in the United States. Instead, you're bringing in Afrikaners from South Africa who you claim have been oppressed and suppressed. You're speaking out of both sides of your mouth, Kevin, and got to tell you, you're full of crap mostly.
Wonder, Bob, why do I call them to get out of America these days? And when the orange man
that's a cute narrative, but it's 250 years of success. There's never been an economy successful as the U.S., and it's still the #1 economy. If you gave me a choice, do I want to go live in China? I have no problem with the Chinese people. The government, I have a huge problem with. They are the adversary. And what's
I'm going to tell you my honest opinion. I trust the Chinese far more than I trust this administration under Donald J. Trump. And the problem with the American system is they do not have much continuity either with how they deal with people. They're very cruel. You got people out in the street, they don't care. In China, you've got bullet trains going everywhere, right out to every village. And people in the village, they have food. They have housing. You claim the Uyghurs are hard done by it. There's an issue with the Uyghurs, but I'm going to tell you, every Uyghur has a place to live and do not have to worry about food either. And every area has high-speed rail to provide access to these outlying areas. And you don't really see what goes on in China. Totally different. Their cities are very, very advanced compared to any North American city. And I spent a lot of time with the people, mostly with the people from the Cultural Revolution. That's been my experience, and a lot of them are no longer around. But if you see how the Politburo has transited a transition of the Chinese society, it's phenomenal. They just want to live in peace and harmony themselves. People in Iran just want to live in peace and harmony. And every other regular Joe in every other country wants the same thing. Nobody wants war. Nobody wants fighting. And this greed to the excess is a real made in America thing more than anything else. We do have it in other areas as well.
What's going to come of this is right now it doesn't look like it, but I guarantee you in 20 years, the Canadian economy that has everything U.S. needs is going to merge with the U.S. economy, and for only one reason, so they can spend 5% of GDP telling the Chinese, don't mess with us. That's where we're going. It's two different thoughts about how a human lives.
Yeah,
Freedom
and I think
of
China's
speech
been far more
versus
successful than America
communism.
has for the vast majority of its population. Chinese aren't the ones who are demonstrating against immigration laws like America's doing at the moment. China doesn't have masses of homeless people on the streets of its city. I've walked through Chinese and American cities, and I tell you which ones I find more comfortable. It's the Chinese, because they don't have to step over a homeless person every 5 meters. Now, that happens in London these days. It certainly happens in San Francisco. There is more discomfort with the political system in America amongst Americans than you'll find amongst the Chinese.
Well, I can't wait to see your home in Shanghai. That sounds great.
Well, come and visit.
Shanghai is Shanghai is an amazing city.
It is,
yeah. I did a documentary on Shanghai.
Yeah.
I mean, it is an incredible place to go.
And I've been I lived in a fourth tier city for some time, only 4 million people, quite small by Chinese standards. And I spent about a month or two playing tennis with people there, going to have meals at local Chinese restaurants. There's a high quality of life at the average standard of living.
I agree the people are fantastic.
America has extremely wealthy people and extremely poor. And this,
I don't want my kids living under Chinese rule anywhere.
Well, your kids can stay where they are, but I think a lot of kids in China are enjoying growing in China right now. And conversations I have with ordinary Chinese people, quite a wide range of lifestyles. They don't have the adversarial attitude toward the government.
This Chinese rule that Kevino'leary is talking about, that's a made in America thing. China's not looking to rule the world like Trump with America is trying to rule the world. Trump wants to see Russia and Trump ruling most of the world, and he wants to see China ruling Asia. That's his vision. This O'Leary is way out of line. China doesn't want to rule the world.
That you have.
Look,
America
I
seems
like
to live
these
in a
anecdotal
Hollywood
stories,
script
but I have a
version
few
of the world
myself.
rather than where it actually is.
I teach these kids at Harvard, okay? Chinese
No wonder they're
nationals,
making
yes,
mistakes in warfare.
there's still some of them that get into North American institutions. They do not want to go home. They want to get an American passport, start an American business, enjoy the American dream, bring their parents
And
over.
that's why America's charging $100,000 for HP visas now, is it? That's really a way to encourage people to come to the country.
You want to bring up random, anecdotal stories. I'm telling you, it's a philosophical discussion we should be having.
And
Do
I've
you
had that
want to live
philosophical
under
discussion. Thank you.
Chinese rule or U.S. policies of freedom of speech?
I gotta tell you, China is not trying to rule the world like America's trying to rule everybody in North America and Latin America. So, Kevino'leary, your statement is a non sequitur. It's a make-believe statement. It's a false narrative. Maybe you need to have that narrative to justify your greed and the ability to justify how you treat other people and make sure they have nothing, and only the top 1 in 10% have everything. Makes no sense.
In democracy.
You know, it's interesting because this reminds me, you recently, Kevin, had a bit of an argument with Tucker Carlson when you went on his show in May about AI data centers and China. You're building huge AI data center in Utah, for example, that's faced opposition. And this was the exchange you had with Tucker. Let's take a look.
By building a data center that trains AI, that provides productivity to the entire nation, we create millions of jobs, high-paying jobs.
So AI is going to create jobs?
Yes.
I thought it was going to eliminate jobs, net.
Just think about the new technologies we don't even know yet that are going to be built off AI. Everybody thinks when television came, everybody would lose their job in radio. That was complete BS. And the same thing is going to happen here.
So what are those millions of jobs? Because we can go through the list that the creators, the people who actually are making AI right now, developing it, we can go through a list of jobs they say it's going to eliminate, which would be like lawyers and financial planners and like the basis of upper middle class America. That's going away. They've said this. What will it be replaced by?
It'll be replaced by new science opportunities, new exploration into space, new manufacturing for robotics, for defense as well.
Where are these millions of new jobs? What specifically are you talking about?
Well, every time technology advances, it creates new opportunities that were not foreseen prior because you don't know the direction of new tech.
Now, it's interesting because, Steve, you've been predicting a huge crash in the AI. You think it's a massive bubble. You think large-scale bankruptcies are coming, not just in AI companies, but across industries as automation replaces the income distribution system that's held capitalism together for 200 years. I mean, I've debated a lot of this on my show. I mean, it seems to me pretty obvious now that AI stroke robots, that the combination of all this is going to cost a lot of human jobs. And I'm not entirely sure that any of us know how they're going to get replaced with new human jobs in this new AI stroke robotic world we're going to live in.
But this actually, if I can dive in here, that comes back to an issue of why do we have jobs in the first place? And the reason we have jobs at the moment is because there are things that aren't possible to automate. Okay, you need manual labours to do things you can't design a machine cheaply for. What robotics and AI implies is the possibility of replacing all those positions. So you don't need humans doing unskilled jobs to carry out those tasks. What are you going to do with unskilled humans? Now, I've seen Musk talk about what he regards as universal high income. So that means the income's got to be generated or created for those people by somewhere else in the system, which he hasn't really thought through. The Chinese have got the same attitude. The Chinese are more likely to replace a displaced worker by reducing the workload of the others and creating things like universities for aged people, which they're already doing, dropping the retirement age and so on. I think those cultural challenges are much greater for America, which has still got the winner-take-all attitude. And if you eliminate jobs, well, tough luck for the person who loses their job. To go to the stage where you actually start protecting their capacity to stay alive, I think is a far, far bigger shift for America than it is for China.
So, I mean, Kevin, you were honest there with Tucker. You're not entirely sure yet where these new jobs will get created for humans, but you believe historically the pattern is when there's new technology, so there will be new jobs for humans. Do you not feel that this is unprecedented territory we're now in? And the example I would give, Tucker referenced lawyers, for example. If you think about the legal system, it begins with people having a job as a legal clerk. Now, AI will clearly do the job of a legal clerk in 10 seconds because most of it is studying previous cases, right, and stuff like that. So AI will just do all that. So you won't have the first rung of the ladder. So legal clerks won't exist. There's no first rung of the ladder. How do you then get to the other rungs of the ladder? How does that ladder work in the future?
Same narrative occurred back when Henry Ford automated manufacturing of automobiles. Every buggy whip maker got wiped out, and they thought it was the end of the world. 94, same discussion about the internet. I actually think...
Yeah, but here's the thing. Henry Ford actually thought this is not good, and he took it upon himself to make sure that every worker could afford a car that's being manufactured. As was presented to Kevino'leary, society is looking to eliminate, but they're just going to leave them at the curb. No thought whatsoever to their destiny, their welfare. And that's the difference. Henry Ford actually said, I've got to make sure the worker makes enough money to be able to afford to buy my car. Nobody in the AI world's doing that. You've seen Elon Musk take a chainsaw to government civil service, and you're finding out you really needed that civil service, but that's another topic for another day. So let's get back to this conversation here.
AI is going to cause massive job shortages, labor shortages in many, many sectors because it will advance opportunities even into space, colonizing the moon for rare minerals, everything else. That takes a tremendous amount of technology and a lot of high skilled paid labor. It's really interesting to watch. I invest in startups, engineering startups. And if you talk to a young engineer that, is 28 to 32 years old, that is building something and you're investing in whatever they're doing, they consider AI as simply a tool. That's all it is. No different than the tool they used when they got the most rudimentary emails back in 86. And I asked them, well, when you do design, you're designing your prototype, whatever it is. I'm thinking about one particular company in Austin, Texas called Uplift, which designs micro homes. These are former engineers out of Tesla and Space and Starlink. And they're using the tech they learned under Elon to build something to support homelessness. It's a self-contained home. They use lots of AI to test their theories about how this is going to work, but they build it with their own ingenuity and they make their own changes. I don't think it's replacing every lawyer. I've got probably 20 lawsuits just around the data centers I'm building. I'm spending more on lawyers than I ever have. And they use lots of AI to study case law. There's even vertical AI. But when they argue in front of a jury, I don't want a robot. I want a lawyer. Same when I'm having, brain surgery. I don't want a robot doing it. I want the hands of a live person. So all of this stuff will get debated. I get it. It's fair. And I think the unknown scares everybody. There seems to be two camps emerging. One that says AI will replace all the jobs and then the robots eat the babies. Camp one. Camp two says this is democratize education, solve for cancer, maybe advance medicine in ways we can't even dream, and space and everything else. I'm in that camp. And defense, because I am still I care a lot about the future of my kids, and I'm not happy having them live under communist rule.
Okay, look, I want to end with something that you may find agreement on. And it's something that, Kevin, you said. I want to play a clip.
Not under communist rule. That's the least of your worries. You want to do, your president, Donald Trump, had actually legislators from the Duma, which is the Russian Congress, visiting GOP senators at the Congress. Canada has the ability to do more trade with the U.S. than Russia does. Mexico has the ability of doing more trade with the United States than Russia does. But Donald Trump would rather use economic warfare via tariffs to make sure everybody that wants to deal with the United States pays an entry fee. Meanwhile, Russia gets a pass. Explain that. Yikes.
Is you talking, giving advice to Gen Z workers about how to spend their money? Got a lot of traction at the time. Let's play this.
You know, you go to work, you spend 15 bucks on a sandwich. What are you, an idiot? It costs you 99 cents to make a sandwich at home and bring it with you. So what if you bring it with you? Bring your own water if you have to, or your own.
Meanwhile, you can't buy a can of tuna for 99 cents. He says, bring your own water. Meanwhile, through deregulation, your water supply at home could very well be polluted because of AI data centers springing up everywhere. You have no regulations in place. It's all about money, money, money. Let's be realistic here. Can of tuna for 99. You can't make a friggin' sandwich for 99 cents. Give me a friggin' break.
Drink or bring your own coffee mug. You start to add that up every day, it's a ton of money. Most people, particularly working in metropolitan cities that are just starting out on their job, making their first 60,000, piss away about 15,000 a year on stupid stuff. And that's what they should stop doing.
Now, I'm going to give you, Steve, one last chance before we wrap things up here to say you agree with Kevino'leary, with that advice to Gen Z.
I think that with Gen Z has become one of the most ungrounded generations in history, and a certain amount of grounding, I think, is a good idea. The being out and playing in the dirt, which is something which we've lost. But I think, frankly, this comes to another issue which I'm sure we disagree on as well, and that is that I think climate change is going to force enormous changes. And if you want to survive climate change, learn how to hunt.
Well, that's for another day, another debate. But I think we've pretty much reached a point of unanimity there on the issue of Gen Z making their own bloody sandwiches. Well said, Kevino'leary. I was cheering the rooftops when you said that. And the fact that the ladies on The View attacked you for it and said you were out of touch made them look out of touch. Anyway, we've got to leave it there. Great debate. Thank you both very much.
Take care. Thank you.
Piers Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. If you enjoy our show,
Piers Morgan, enjoy that show, enjoy my show. Do you enjoy my show? I'm going to give you a truth, a different truth from what everybody else is giving. It may challenge your belief systems, but I have to question why do you give tax breaks to the 1% and the 10%? Meanwhile, the foundation's where the money needs to go. You build up. This trickle-down effect created the problem of affordability. You need to build up. Anyways, love and peace to everyone. Let me know what you think in the comments section. Ciao for now.